Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to speak about Wonder Woman once again. But first, I want to read from Isaiah 46. It's not going to be very lengthy, but let's get into it. Bel bowed down. Nebo stooped. Their idols were upon the beast and upon cattle. Your carriages were heavily laden. They were a burden to the weary beast. The beast stooped, and they bowed down together. They could not deliver the burden, but themselves had gone into captivity. Remember captivity. We'll talk about that a little bit longer. Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel. There is a remnant of Israel, see, which are born by me from the belly, which were carried from the womb. And even to your old age I am he. Even to the hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made and I will bear. Even I will carry and deliver you. Who will you liken unto me and make me equal? Who will you compare me to, that we may be alike? They take gold out of the bag and weigh silver in the balance, and hire a goldsmith, and he makes it a god. And they fall down and they worship it. They bear it upon the shoulder, and they carry it, and set it in its place. And it stands, and from its place it never moves. Yet one will cry unto it, and yet it will not answer, nor save him out of his trouble. Remember this, and show yourselves men. Bring it to mind, O you transgressor. Remember the former things of old. For I am God, there's no one else. I'm God, there's no one like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all that's in my pleasure. Calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executes my counsel from a far country. Yes, I have spoken it, and it comes to pass. I purpose it, and I also do it. Listen to me, you who are far from righteousness. I bring my righteousness. It shall not be far from you, and my salvation, it will not be or take long. I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. A lot of people make idols, and this is all about idols. This is about investing your time and your life into something that just sucks from you, really, and gives you absolutely nothing back. That's what that reading's about. And in this case, some people live for money. They try to get as much wealth as they possibly can, and their entire lives are just about amassing wealth. Other people, they live for prestige and favor, favorable speaking of other people, and standing in the world. That's all their lives are based on, reception and feedback. Other people, they live a life of service. They live a life in which it's about giving back and not about receiving. Those people generally live a life of love. And love, you can't go wrong. Love's not something you can see and say love is here or love is over there. Love is not something that will treat you wrong. Whereas you are a beast of burden carrying these things such as wealth or fame or prestige or recognition or some class identification. These are burdens which you serve, you slave for, and you have to carry them like cattle and beasts. They do nothing for you except you serve them. Whereas love serves you. No matter how much service you ever do in the world, you will never outdo the love that moves you to do that. And that's the cool thing about love. Why I use the word love is because it's easier for people to identify with love than say God or the Lord, because most of the time we personify these things so much that at the end of the day we forget that they're ever present and they're ever working in our lives. What makes you love your family so much? Why will you go to the nth degree to do almost anything for them? Because of love. Why is it that some people will sacrifice and even themselves sacrifice not just their lives but their futures, their savings, all their possessions, just to save the life of somebody they love? Whether it's your family, whether it's a friend, whether it's a spouse, whether it's your kids, whether it's someone you just met, but they have a similar belief system with you. Love will make you do things you never thought you would do. And it's always worth it because it carries the load, not you. There is a scripture that says in 1 Corinthians 13, it says love bears all things. And how we know love bears all things? Well, everything that ever has been created because of love. We exist because of love. This very moment where I'm speaking to you guys, the fact that good things are happening, that we can speak to one another through the internet, is because of love. Love is the fabric, the foundation, the base for which we are able to exist. We exist because of love. So you must understand, any good thing that happens, it's because of love. And even sometimes some of the bad things that happen are because of love. It is the foundation. It bears us. Whereas we bear things that we want to see happen. If you live for wealth, or you live for fame, or you live for riches, or you live for recognition, or you live for status, these things always consume you. But love does not consume us in such a manner that it is a burden to us. There is no burden that a person would bear that love cannot bear. That's why if you love someone, you will do just about anything to ensure that they live, that they're safe, that they're taken care of. Because love goes beyond the boundaries of the feasible. It even goes beyond the boundaries of what we generally agree is possible. Love can heal. Miracles happen because people care and they pray for other people. Love is that powerful. And that's what Wonder Woman, this mythos, this pop culture mythos is all about. I would like you guys to check out Sony's movie that's coming up, which is going to be about Professor Marston, William Marston Moulton, and his life. It's the story behind the creation of Wonder Woman. Now, a lot of people feel that this story is going to be kinky and it's about sex stuff and so on. Trust me, this story is a hell of a lot more than that. Okay? Yes, William Moulton Marston has a very controversial lifestyle. I absolutely agree. I personally would not have a lifestyle like that. But there is more to that movie than meets the eye. And so you have to have an open mind when you read it. Of course, you better have a sense of morals and compass, because you cannot allow things to change your moral compass. You must be able to exist in a world where, as an adult, you must be able to be selective about what you retain and what is not for you. You must know these things. Impressionable minds and young growing minds, I would not suggest you watch this movie. This is a movie for adult people who can filter things. Having said that, This movie has a lot more in it than what Grace Randolph was saying it is. It's not what it's been advertised to be in the trailers. So think about what I'm saying here. Sony's got a really gem of a piece here. I'm looking forward to it. What I would suggest you do read is by Jill Lepore. Jill Lepore has done a lot of research into Wonder Woman, and some of this information has actually appeared in the Smithsonian. She's actually done a book which is called The Secret History of Wonder Woman. Okay, she's written that book. If you want, you can go and buy that book. It's really a good book, and the story of Wonder Woman, this movie is going to be based off of that book for sure, and a lot of other research that has to do with that. So absolutely you need to go see it. But in this particular article that she put out, which is a really good one, she calls William Marston Moulton, she calls him a bastard. But here, what's really cool about him, anyway, not rascal, sorry. What's interesting about him here is that in Wonder Woman you see some of the iconography, or let me say it better. Let me put it this way. In Wonder Woman you see a lot of parallels between William Moulton Marston's belief system as well as his life, and also what people around him that have influenced him, their values as well. So let's get into it. First of all, she says here, William Moulton Marston, he was generally considered the inventor of the polygraph test. He administers it to the secretary of his law firm in 1921. Okay, so here he has the polygraph test he's doing here to his secretary. Well, remember, that's 1921. That's very, very early in the 20th century. And in his Wonder Woman comic, it's shown here in Victory at Sea for March 1943. Steve Trevor proposes administering a lie detector test to Diana Prince, who is secretly Wonder Woman. So here he's going to do a lie detector test for Diana Prince. Now do remember the lasso of Hestia, also known as the lasso of truth, is kind of like it gets the truth out of you. So it's also very interesting that was one of the things he utilized. Here he is again. Before taking a lie detector test. Olive Byrne is this lady here. Okay, this is Olive Byrne here. Okay. Now, I don't want to go too much into her article. I would prefer if you read this article, but I'm just highlighting specific things here. The article is very fascinating and very interesting. There's a lot of things going on, but I just want to highlight certain things. So let's just get to it. So here he is again, implementing the polygraph test, and Olive Byrne is the one recording the results. Now, Olive Byrne was a mistress of William Moulton Marston. Okay, and the interesting thing about Olive Byrne here in this case is that she, without going into too much detail, she is someone who William Marston, when he was lecturing, she was somebody that he was attracted to. He was going to leave his wife for her, but instead, there was an arrangement made with his wife, Olive Byrne, and she came to live with them. And that was called a secretive. But there's a lot more going on here. Now, Wonder Woman and bondage. This is a big thing because a lot of people have an issue with that. But I think a lot of people do not really understand what it really implies. But Marston insisted that Wonder Woman be chained or tied in nearly every story. Okay? And here you see Wonder Woman chained here, and she's tied, holding the aerial firmly in her teeth. Wonder Woman unties the bomb from her ankles. So see her untying her bondage. This will be some weight off of my molars if only I could break these wrist chains. So she's holding on to this thing here. As she's tied, there's a missile on her. She breaks the stuff so the missile can fall, and then she snaps the chains. Summoning the last ounce of her diminished strength, Wonder Woman strains at her wrist chains. Weakened by filing, they break. What a sweet song. My mind-made bonds have snapped. My woman's power returns again. So she breaks the chains. This is very important. A lot of times people talk about, oh, Wonder Woman's always been bonded, she's always been tied up, this is some kind of kinky stuff. No, it's not really kinky stuff. And here's the answer to that. Now, William Moulton Marston, he generally speaking didn't talk too much about this. Okay, he didn't talk too much about women's suffrage and the bondage of women. But this was a time in which women were still fighting for the right to vote. And the hidden message that Wilton Marston, and he was very particular about Wonder Woman being tied up all the time in specific ways. And the reason is because it was actually connected to women's suffrage, the feminist movement. And so a lot of times people think, oh, it's so kinky, and she's not. No. Notice two things. She will get tied up. She's never saved from being tied up. She always has to find a way to break the chains herself. No one breaks those chains for her. It's very important. I think a lot of people miss this point when we talk about, in fact, even in the very recent Wonder Woman film, Wonder Woman, with Patty Jenkins directed, Wonder Woman was also tied up. If you do remember, Ares took the actual wheels or the chain links of the tank and he wrapped it around Wonder Woman, putting her in bondage. And if you do remember, she burst that bondage after seeing Steve Trevor die. She just exploded and burst the chains of that bondage. Okay, so every single Wonder Woman movie, there has to be a point in which she is bondaged. And that is because, think about it now, if women's the power of women is truly on display, you will always find some man will rise up and feel, no, this needs to be contained. And they will try to put these women back in bondage. Okay? And this has happened time and time again. And all kinds of words and descriptions and adjectives have been ascribed to these women. They've been called old hags. They've been called men. They've been called dykes. They've been called all kinds of derogatory names. You can name pigs and hags and all kinds of crazy names. And this is because, and always you see the men say, oh, I wish I could chain this woman up, you know, and it's literally trying to put them back in enslavement. So the fight for women's suffrage, the feminist movement for equal rights, only equal rights. It's not about trying to have more rights than men. It's not trying to beat down men and just have a woman's only world. It's not that. It's simply a struggle, just like with racism. It's simply a struggle to be on equal footing, to be taken seriously, to be treated with, where there's a job where the criteria is the same, to be treated equally. Why is it that two people doing the same job, getting the same results, get paid differently? That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. Why is it in society a man can go a certain place singly, but in some societies a woman has to be accompanied by a man to enter certain places? Still to this day, these are things going on. And these are inequalities which should not happen. In a so-called democratic world where we say we have freedoms and liberties, why is it still certain fields women are being hazed for entering those fields by men? And so you have to understand, only in 2017 we have a female director dealing with a $150 million budget movie. The first female director to successfully put out a comic book movie. Why is it we have the first female, 2017 I'm talking about now, 2017 we have the first female with this huge budget. No other female director has gotten a budget of over $150 million. No other female director in Hollywood. And I'm just saying, why is it that we have such a unequal footing? It's not that we are short of female directors. It's not that we're short of outstanding female directors who have won Academy Awards and so on. It's not that. It's that there's this inequality, there's this feeling that men alone can do things well, and if a woman enters the field, she's out of her place. She shouldn't be doing this. And that should never happen in 2017. And we've gone steps backward, having a president who definitely insults women, and he's been very derogatory to women, and in the public face. And he's not doing much good for that. I don't know how much good he actually does in his private space, but publicly, he sees women a certain sort of way, and he's very derogatory towards them. And that shouldn't be happening. So anyway, moving along, like I said, if a woman seems to flex her muscles and seems to have some level of power, she's seen as a threat to men, she's seen as testosterone driven for some reason or the other, even though she may behave as a woman. Up to this day, why is Hillary Clinton considered this evil, vile liar and cheater and so on? Why is she seen as so vile? Because she's a threat. Now, I'm not a proponent of lesbianism. I'm not a proponent of homosexuality, but I will tell you this. Other than those policies, I think she was just trying to serve the average American person. You know, I'm not into the gay and lesbian stuff, but I'll tell you that her policies weren't bad at all. And again, we still have racism, we still have sexism, we still have chauvinism. And it's amazing. You're talking about 1921, William Marston was bringing this comic to the fore. And he was very specific in highlighting women's suffrage and also other things. Now, what people didn't know, and why this is very interesting, is because Olive Byrne, who was the one that was assisting him in the lie detector test, she was actually the daughter of Margaret Sanger. And Margaret Sanger, she was known for birth control, but she was also known as a feminist and for women's rights. Now, I'm not really going to go into birth control and all of those issues that involve birth control. That's a whole other story for another day. But suffice it to say that these were people who chained themselves to the White House fence to protest for women's suffrage. These were women that marched through the streets to protest for women's suffrage. And of course, the men didn't like it, and most men were very derogatory towards these women. And these women were making a very strong statement that you are tying us down, you're putting us in bondage, you're telling us we can only do these things and we cannot do other things. And one of the things human beings really hate is for another human being to tell them what they can and can't do where other human beings are doing it and it's legit and legal. You know what I mean? We don't like seeing that. We feel it's unfair. If I see you going out there and you're allowed to go and get all the commercial jobs to paint. You're painting all the signs everywhere. And I go out there and because I'm a woman, you say, hey, you cannot paint signs because you're a woman. Or you cannot paint signs because you're black. Or you cannot paint, nope, that's illegal. We'll put you in jail if you try to get any contracts from anyone to paint signs. Because you're black and you're not considered a human, or you're a woman, you should stay home and work in the house, or you're 18 but you're too young, or you're 63 so you're too old, so it's illegal to do that. I mean, these are just ridiculous things, right? And my point being, women were not granted suffrage, and there was no reason why half the population shouldn't be allowed to be part of the elected process, because they're all affected by it. So women were fighting for suffrage, and you can see them here. They bound themselves. So this woman, she's showing that she couldn't speak. She has no voice. She could not vote. So she bound her mouth, and she also bound some ballot paper. She crumpled the ballot paper together. Okay, so you see here, the bondage of Wonder Woman echoed the iconography used by early suffragists, cartoon by Lou Rogers, far right, and the feminists like Margaret Sanger, who's on the left here, who was, as I said, Olive Byrne's aunt or mother, I can't remember, protecting censorship. Okay, so that was a hidden message in Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, up to this day, Wonder Woman gets chained, bound, and gagged almost in every single issue of Wonder Woman. And some people were particularly perturbed by this, and they were saying, this is something kind of like almost like a rapist fantasy, so it's kind of sadistic. And why is this always happening in every Wonder Woman comic? Not understanding, and William Moulton Marston, he went to his grave never telling anyone why. He held it as a secret. But we are able to debunk it because of his wife, and also Olive Byrne, and some other people, close family relatives associated with, able to see what he was actually doing. Now, there's another thing, another point here. Now, they talked about gentler methods of restraining Wonder Woman without the use of chains. That would be Dorothy Rubisek. So they talked about her here being restrained in a life jacket here, and she bursts the life jacket, and she breaks free and jumps out of the window. And we saw with Patty Jenkins, she used, well, it wasn't an easier way of restraint, but she used the tracking, the tire tracking of the tank, right? Here she is again, and here Wonder Woman goes to court, and she's on trial in the courtroom with eye-defying speed. Diana slips under Steve's chair and emerges on the other side of Steve's chair as Wonder Woman. "I'm here, Your Honor. You called me to the witness stand?" Why, yes. Okay. Though Wonder Woman drifted from her feminist beginnings, she emerged as a symbol of female empowerment, even on lunchbox sets like that of above. You see her with the lasso of truth here, and she's blocking bullets. But there's a little bit more. I'm trying to find it right now. In 1972, the Miss magazine, which is a feminist magazine, put her on the cover of the magazine's first issue, Wonder Woman for President. Cartoonist David Levine drew Margaret Sanger as Wonder Woman in 1978. Margaret Sanger, again, known for the birth control, along with Byrne's mother. I forgot what her name is. In July 1973 cover of Sister, published by Los Angeles Woman's Chair, shows Wonder Woman wielding a speculum. That's a birth control. So Sister was dealing with birth control. With my speculum, I am strong. I can fight. It's a birth control method here. In this episode, Wonder Woman takes another character, Biff, back in time to prove that history, especially women's history. And again, this is very interesting because, again, this has to do with tying in the lore to actual historical events that actually happened. And in Wonder Woman, the very first issue of Wonder Woman, we see that actually happening. Now, Marston insisted that comic books were an elevated form of literature, fantasies that touch the tender spots of universal human desires and aspirations. All right. Now, it also says here, Marston tried to showcase Wonder Woman's athleticism wherever possible. In this 1942 comic, she plays baseball. In other episodes, she plays ice hockey, tennis, and even funds a chain of fitness clubs. So this was revolutionary for the time. Some people said she was underdressed, but really she was more like an athlete. She was dressed like an athlete. So I think a lot of people misunderstood that. Now here you see Wonder Woman, and this was in one of the issues, facing Ares here, and she's beating the crap out of Ares. And that's pretty awesome to see as well. But I particularly want to just draw your attention to the Wonder Woman comic here. Now, as we know, this comic was actually endorsed by some very powerful women. And you had Miss Alice Marble, who was the associated editor of Wonder Woman. You have Jean Tunney, Jack Dempsey. They endorsed Wonder Woman. Also Helen Wainwright Stelling, who was the Olympic gold medalist in swimming and broke the Olympic records. Okay? So here you see Helen Wainwright Stelling talking about it. Of course, this is the history of Wonder Woman it begins with, and we find out about Ares, who's now known as Mars. But what I want to really highlight also in Wonder Woman is, in this comic, as I said before, she was tied a lot, but every time Wonder Woman was tied, she would break the bonds. This is very important to understand. I think a lot of times people miss that point in Wonder Woman, okay, and how strong she was. So in this, I think it was the second issue, the second story in this, Wonder Woman gets bound somewhere around here, somewhere. You'll see her in a minute. Get bound. Well, even a lot of things get bound in Wonder Woman. The elephant got bound. See them getting bound there, and then finally break free. Then Wonder Woman, they get trapped in a trap, and then they're bound. So there's a lot of bounding. Okay, a lot of people get trapped, but they always get freed. They always break free. See her chained to the elephants here, tusk of the elephant. Then Wonder Woman breaks the chains. Then the guy, he tries to get Wonder Woman crushed by the elephant. She holds back the elephant's legs, and she beats the crap out of the guy who tried to chain her. Okay. But what I love about Wonder Woman, which you realize Charles Marston does a lot of, is they go into, this is actually told by Alice Marble, however, the associate editor, who we just saw up above. She talks about Wonder Woman of history as told by Alice Marble. And we talk about, she covers Florence Nightingale. For those of you who don't know, Florence Nightingale was born to a rich family. She's wealthy, but she went in and participated in the war learning nursing. This was a lowly job for the aristocrats. They usually went to fight wars. And she was able to help all the people in battle, the British soldiers. And she actually was, they paid tribute to her by putting up an Amazon warrior was represented by her. So she was able to save mankind. You are the chosen to begin our work. Oh, how strong she is, how beautiful she seems to be. It said that Florence Nightingale, at the beginning of her career, was inspired by an ancient statue of an Amazon maiden, which she saw in Rome. That's what inspired her to take action. And again, it's all about love, okay? That's what Wonder Woman is all about. So she started nursing. Now, as a child, she had seen a cat, a little stray cat, get stoned by a boy, and she sought to help the cat instead of going to a party. And that attitude translated into her actually doing what Gal Gadot did in the movie, where she stood up to the authorities when the soldiers were being dying out in the battlefield. She says this: how like this little drama was a scene years later when Florence unleashed her temper against British Army officials who refused medical supplies for wounded soldiers. With 1,000 suffering men waiting for these medicines, you dare torment them by delay? I'll write my friend Herbert, the war minister. Our lady, what matter if you common soldiers, but if you insist. And you remember Wonder Woman talking to the generals, you should be ashamed. You should be ashamed of yourself. You know, when they used to talk about, in war soldiers die, right? Florence Nightingale did this as well. And it's a nice callback to Florence Nightingale, where you saw Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman actually lecturing the officials. And Florence Nightingale, she existed around the time of, let's see, it would say somewhere here, 1820 to 1910, okay? So in the 1800s, there was a battle going on, and the soldiers need help. So I'm just showing you how beautiful Wonder Woman is. Wonder Woman actually goes back into the history of women, how she took care of soldiers, how she fought in the war, helped the soldiers in the war and were dedicated to them. At the end of the war, she returned home. They didn't recognize her, and then when they found out, they celebrated her. They were able to open up a nursing school in lieu of her name, and a lot of nurses learned nursing from there. And she was later on bestowed the mighty founder of the New Health era by King Edward VII. Okay, so before she died, 3 years before she died, the king actually came and visited her and gave her this mighty award. And she was really inspired, which is really incredible, by the Amazon maiden who held the lamp and guided her, a Wonder Woman indeed, through the darkness to the glory of heaven. So I'm just saying, that when you see Wonder Woman, it was very empowering, the early Wonder Woman articles. And little kids would watch this. This is why Patty Jenkins brought to life the spirit of Wonder Woman, the early spirit of Wonder Woman. Because Wonder Woman was watered down in the 1970s, as you heard. And she was less of a feminist icon. She was more of a sex symbol and all kinds of other things. But here, William Moulton Marston was able to pull out, the feminist roots of Wonder Woman. And again, I say this again, and I'll say it again. William Moulton Marston was the one who wrote the story of Wonder Woman, because he had wrote many different things, but his inspiration came from Olive Byrne and from his wife, Elizabeth Moulton Marston, okay, or Elizabeth Marston, okay. So I just want you guys to get that, because Moulton Marston had a somewhat sort of controversial life, kind of, but at the end of the day, he also through that controversy with some sincerity, and there were some really powerful things that were said. Oh, by the way, Miss Marble, who in her youth played Sandaloff baseball with Joe DiMaggio, overcame a serious illness to win the world's amateur championship, considered the greatest woman tennis player of her time. She recently signed as Assistant Director for Physical Fitness in the United States Office of Civilian Defense to become the head of Women's Activities, the Special Events Committee of the Naval Relief Society. So this woman ain't no joke. Okay, this was Alice Marble. She's the one that wrote about Florence Nightingale in the Wonder Woman comic. So, I mean, exceptional, extraordinary woman back in the day that could do multiple things. Also, William Moulton Marston, he was an extraordinary man. He could do multiple things as well. They were a lot of polymaths back in the day. We don't have as much polymaths today. But, like I said, this is what Wonder Woman is about. So, I really hope that Sony does a good job of getting all of the different feminist rights and feminist stuff going on with William Moulton Marston. The secret of Wonder Woman is more than just about William Moulton Marston. It's about years of women's suffrage, years of the feminist movement, years of how different people were able to see and address women's issues, okay, and women empowerment. So please understand that there's a lot going on in this story of Wonder Woman and why it appeals to so many people, men and women alike, because Wonder Woman is all about equality. And the thing about the parallels between Wonder Woman and the Statue of Liberty that the United States kind of has, and the Francis Statue of Liberty, or the analog to that, Lady Liberty as it's called, they're really, really close. And the fact that if you think about the gods that the Greeks even worship and stuff, Diana, Aphrodite is also known, aka Venus, you will understand where these attributes come from that led to this movie, right? Being what it is. So, on that note, I hope you guys enjoy this. And I hope you guys have a great one. Of course, Olive Byrne, who's played by this actress here, and this is William Moulton Marston, and this is his wife, Elizabeth. She has a different name. I forgot what it was. Now, honestly, as you could see, Olive Byrne actually looked more like Elizabeth here, and I guess Elizabeth looked more like this character. I don't know. I haven't really seen her pictures of her. But either way, it doesn't really matter, because the characters that you see here, hopefully, if they really captured, if Sony has truly captured the essence of, I'm hoping to get the truth of the situation out in a movie, and it's not just some relationship watered down baloney. I'm hoping not. I mean, they're gonna probably make it a personal drama, but let's just see what they do with it, because that is very important. This is how the inception of Wonder Woman came to be. Why William Moulton Marston did certain things. Why, on the advice of Elizabeth, his wife, who was, she was a matter of fact and let's make this thing happen kind of person. On her advice and her counsel as to how to approach Wonder Woman, with the understanding of the feminist movement, suffrage, women's rights, etc., that William Moulton Marston created things a specific kind of way for Wonder Woman. Like even the boots. I was wondering why she wasn't using the Grecian boots. Well, Wilton, Moulton, Marston probably decided it was going to be this kinds of boots for a particular reason. I'm not really quite sure exactly why, but I'm sure he had his specific reasons for why he said what he was saying. Remember, this guy is a psychologist, as was Olive Byrne as well. Okay, so should be interesting. Anyway, on that note, you guys have a great one.